Hi everyone, I wanted to do a video on my OMPHobby M1 helicopter. So right now I'm doing a trim flight, and in order to do a trim flight you would bind the helicopter, and in this case I'm using a Futaba 14SG, and you would get into the stabilization mode. And you know you're in stabilization mode when the red light is solid. And in order to get into a trim flight, as you can see, you would hold down on the elevator stick and wait until the solid red light begins to flash. And now you would start the trim flight. And the goal of the trim flight is to have the least amount of stick movements and at the same time have the helicopter stay in a certain same position. And once you've achieved using the least amount of stick movements, then you can go ahead and land the helicopter. And as you can see later on in the video, you would hold down on the elevator stick and you would see the flashing red light turn solid, and that's when you know that the setting has saved. And usually the reason why I like to do trim flights is usually when I crash I would notice that the servos are off-centered. So after making adjustments and recentering the servos, when I would get back into stabilization mode, I would notice like a drift. And it's not necessarily a good thing, especially when you use your stabilization mode as a rescue, is when you're inverted and you use a rescue, you'll notice that the helicopter will have this unpredictable drift, and most likely it'll, might make you crash. So now I'm in stabilization mode, and I gotta tell you, even in stabilization mode, I mean, this thing is just really fun to fly. I mean, nothing crazy, you know? And if you're getting into RC helicopters, the OMPHobby M1 is something I would highly recommend. I mean, it's really stable. Before this, I actually purchased a line T-Rex 300X, and I gotta tell you, this thing outperforms, this M1 outperforms the 300X. I mean, I couldn't even get the 300X to fly. So yeah, that was a trim flight. The other helicopters I actually have two M1s, orange one and a yellow one. I noticed that the orange stands out a little bit more, easier to see than the yellow, so I prefer to use the orange, and I have a yellow as a backup. The other two helicopters I have, I also have a T-Rex 500L Dominator and a T-Rex 600, and that's a nitro. And the M1, you know, I try to get it close to the way both of those fly, and it's pretty darn close, you know. Here I'm doing some mild 3D. I've actually crashed this helicopter several times, and I gotta admit, this thing can take a beating. And there was one time I had to change out the frame, and I mean, parts are cheap, you know, pretty easy to fix. Again, you know, it's highly recommend this M1 to anyone who's, you know, getting into the hobby. I've actually took a long break before getting an M1, so coming back into this, I mean, yeah, the M1, that's what I'm doing, this video mainly just to tell you guys how good this thing is. The throttle I'm using in normal mode is about 45%. Idle up 1, 55, and idle up 2 is 65, and I'm just playing around with it. Right here is an idle up 1 with the throttle of 55, and notice that I think it was because the way I had my pitch settings, the blaze would stall. But once I, you know, got into idle up 2, I mean, then it just flew really good. So I might, you know, change the settings next time I come out to fly. And if any of you guys decide, you know, to get into you know, get a RC helicopter, I would also recommend a simulator first, and you know, practice hovering. And when you get comfortable, then I would, you know, recommend you guys to get an M1. If you guys like this video, if you guys want me to do some other videos of my settings and my radio setup, just leave me a comment below. I wanted to thank you guys for watching.